Hey guys, Bart from TST Industries here. In this video, we're going to show you the installation of these Womet-Tech frame sliders on a 2013 and up Honda CBR600RR. These frame sliders are race-proven in Moto America and other series around the world, and they provide superior protection for your motorcycle. They are the cut type sliders, so they will require modification to the fairings that they have to protrude through, but for that reason, we include templates that make locating the hole easy, and that way you don't have to do any guesswork or any complicated measuring. By default, these sliders come with a black center cap that covers the hole in the slider portion. For this particular build, due to the fact that this bike already has some blue accents on it, we've chosen the blue anodized caps. These are available as an option, and they're available in a couple of different colors. You guys can check that out on our website. As far as this build goes, it's a medium difficulty build. It'll take about a half hour, so if you follow along, let's get started. So in the first step, we will have to remove the fairing panel. I've chosen the right side of the motorcycle to begin with. We're removing a couple fasteners here. Using a 5mm Allen for these. The screw in this location has a shoulder. Memorize that. That's the one that goes back in the frame. The other ones do not have a shoulder. All right, there's another Allen head screw down here joining the two belly fairing panels together. That will need to come out. This one also has a shoulder, but is a smaller thread. This is an M5 thread. So that's what will separate these two. And up front, down at the bottom, joining the two panels, we have a rivet type fastener. It gets backed out with a Phillips screwdriver. For these little guys, I like to use a bit. It's just a little bit more handy. It's one of these guys. And there's an additional one, the same type, on the inside, joining the panel behind these two panels, right about here. And now we can actually split these panels and extract them off the bike. So the inner panel here stays on this fairing, and we could take this to our table and determine where we're going to cut a hole in it. So I went ahead and cut out the templates from our template sheet, and I'm going to be using the one designated as right fairing on the right fairing panel that we just took off the bike. I'm going to show you guys how to attach the template to the fairing and identify where the hole is going to be placed. So we're going to be working in this region here. This tab on our template will go into this notch here, and the flat portion here, straight line portion, will align with this straight line feature, just like that. And then you have these two little notches here that will fit around these gusset features behind the fairing panel. So what I'll do here, I'll just form this tab a little bit so that it goes through here. And you have to be careful with how you place this, because the precision of where your hole center ends up being is influenced heavily by how precisely you place down this template onto your fairing. So I like to use painter's tape because it's removable, and if I mess up along the line somewhere, I can replace it. Here you can see me working it into that corner here with my nail, making sure that the straight line feature of the template is preserved against the straight line feature of the fairing. As you can see here, the geometry of the fairing here matches the geometry of the cutout line on our template. I'm going to press down against where it says hole center and place some tape here to fix it down. And for good measure, I'm going to throw another piece of tape on there so it doesn't move on us. And now you want to touch it, make sure it hasn't shifted, and that all these features I was talking about, whose placement precision is very important, haven't shifted. So this looks good here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a step drilling method. First, I'm going to use a 1/8 inch drill bit and go through the center. And before I press my trigger, I'm going to press down on it and get a bite from my drill bit. And then I'm going to go through. Now at this point, we have a pilot hole, so we can get rid of the template. So now you have to make a choice. You're either going to go with a 1 1/8 inch diameter hole. That will be a clearance hole for the spacer. This will not allow you to take off this fairing panel without having to take off your frame slider on that side. Now the implication here is basically you will need to take off this puck and the slider every time you go to do an oil change. It's not that big of a deal, it's only one side. If you don't want to go through that, you will need to cut a clearance hole of 2 inches that will fit around the slider. So the choice is yours. For this installation, we're going to go with the smaller hole because this is a cosmetic install and we're okay with the fact that we're going to have to take off the slider to do oil changes. All right, so let's begin. So what I like to do here is protect my paint around where I'm going to be drilling or sawing a hole. Use painter's tape one more time. Poke a hole through the center. Now we're probably going to have little shards of plastic flying, so eye protection is always a good idea. Another thing to note at this point is that this fairing sits at roughly this orientation to the center line of the engine bolt that will be where this guy mounts into. So I'm going to keep that in mind so that we hold the drill at a similar angle. All right, so I'm going to place my pilot drill for this saw in the hole that I created as the pilot hole and take small bites. All right, here we go. Nice. All right, so we have a nice clearance hole now. This is plastic, so it does leave these frilly sort of melted pieces. You can use a utility knife or a file to clean up that job. I like to use a file. Takes very small bites and enables me to really finish off that hole and make it look really proper. Now from the outside, what I like to do is go in on an angle with very light pressure, so that way we can smooth this paint into that surface, make sure there's no little shards sticking up that will get snagged on something at some point and peeled. All right, and now I'm pretty happy with how this came out. I'm ready to go back on the bike. I'll just go through selection of the proper parts for the right side of the bike. So in the kit, we have 2 pucks, short and long offset spacer, 2 bolts, one of them longer than the other, and 2 of these washers. So since we're working on the right side, I'm going to configure all the right components. The longer setup is for the left side of the bike, so I will put that to the side. All the shorter components go on the right side, and they will be configured like this. And now we can get over to the bike and take off the motor bolt, replace the fairing panel, and then screw this assembly in. All right, so I'm going to be using a 17mm socket on this bolt head. Whoa. All right. Now the best way to do this is one side at a time. Don't skip ahead to any other step and take out both of these motor bolts. They'll likely cause your motor to droop a little bit in the frame, and you don't want that. All right, so we have a spacer that fell out that goes in between the motor and this motor mount. So we'll need to replace that in there as we screw in our frame slider assembly. I'm going to grab a 19mm socket. And I'm also going to grab our panel, and I'm going to reinstall this panel on here. I'm going to have to put a couple of these fasteners back. So I'm going to grab the shoulder screw with the M6 thread. I'm going to put it back into the frame. I'm going to put these back. These actually don't have a hard stop. They go into a rubber well nut, so you have to exercise care when tightening them. Once you start feeling resistance, you just go in 1.5 to 2 turns, and then they're set. Okay, so I have enough screws in this so that it stays in place and we can perform the installation. I'm not going to be replacing all of the screws just yet because some of the fasteners join the lower belly panels together, and I'm still going to be working on the left side. So now we'll grab the spacer that came out from in between the motor mount and the motor, and holding it through this hole in the fairing here, I'm going to align it back in its proper position, making sure that it's coaxial with the 2 members I just called out. And then I'm going to put my pre-configured right side slider through here, and now I'm going to start threading it in. Now make sure that if you feel any sort of resistance on these threads, right away back it out and make sure everything's clean, all the threads are clean. You don't want to cross thread this connection. It's a very important one. So now everything's looking good. I'm just gonna bottom this out with my regular ratchet. And I'm going to grab my torque wrench, set it to 40 Newton meters or 29.5, roughly 30 foot-pounds of torque, and torque this connection. Now the mechanical fastening's complete. I can now move on to closing out the hole in the slider. Like I said, you have a choice of different color caps. We've chosen the blue ones because they accent the bike really nicely. I like to line it up so the W from the logo is level with the ground. Press it in, and now this side is good to go. We're going to move on to the left side of the bike. And of course, the one leftover fastener from the inside, a little push fastener. All right, let's go over to the table. Using the left fairing designated template that we've cut out, we are going to process the left side fairing this time. Let's see, where does it go? Okay, so we have the notch in the fairing here. Again, I'll show you guys a better angle. And then we have the two little slits that fit on these gussets. All the other geometry lines up. I'm gonna form that tab just a little bit, make it hook around. And that looks pretty good there. Prep some tape. All right, so once I have all these parts aligned, all the features aligned, making sure that straight line goes into that little channel straight line feature. Just start taping this down. Same procedure as on the right side fairing, really. Just want to get it fixed down. Most crucial area is really underneath the crosshairs here. So I'm going to press on it so it lies in the right position. All right, and now I'm ready for my pilot hole. Switch back over to the 1/8 inch bit. Bite it in first. All right, and now we have a pilot hole. So we can get rid of the template. Eye protection, very important. Let's see. Like I mentioned on the other side, we want to make sure that we're drilling on the same axis as the bolt that's coming out of the motor. And if you're holding the fairing, make sure that none of your body parts are close to where this thing will come out. Form that hole. And proceed to drill on the axis that I think is correct. All right. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to file it down, make sure it's nice and clean. Take off any excess chips. I am using a half round file on this. Really wouldn't be possible with a flat file. All right, I think we're looking good on this side. We're ready to go back to the bike. Let's grab the appropriate parts that are left over from the kit and get that process started. All right, so I'm gonna use the 17mm wrench again. Again, a spacer comes out and needs to be put back in while we're reassembling all of these components. So I'm going to prep myself a 19mm socket, and now I'm going to want to put this fairing panel back on. I like to start with the front tab here. It makes everything else easier. I also need to clear this here. There we go. All right. Replace a couple of these fasteners. All right, we have enough fasteners in here so it keeps in place. I'm gonna grab our setup and the spacer. I'm gonna find a way to put the spacer back into alignment, the motor mount and the frame mount. This is a little cumbersome here, but it's definitely possible. I'm almost there. And here we go. And once again, you want to make sure that you don't cross-thread this. So if you're feeling too much resistance, it's probably getting cross-threaded. Once you bottom it out, grab a torque wrench, set it to 40 Newton meters or 29.5, roughly 30 foot-pounds. And once that's torqued, you can go ahead and put one of these center caps in. And at this point, all that remains to do is replace all of the fasteners that we took out during the disassembly process in both sides. And make sure everything's tight. You don't want to be rolling down the road and losing your fasteners. Sit on this side. And once all that's done, I like to go over one more time over all the fasteners that I've disturbed and make sure that they are in fact tight. All right, there you have it. This installation's complete. It took roughly half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. Fairly simple once you get okay with the fact that you have to drill through your fairings. Now we have adequate protection for our engine and controls in case the bike goes down. That only goes further with some of our other crash protection components. You can check out our video about the total protection pack for this particular vehicle. It's going to be on our channel shortly after we launch this video. Other than that, if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, please post them in the comment feed below this video, and we'll see you next time.